Welcome, everybody. Oh, I don't know if this is working. It's on. Can you hear me? Okay, well, it doesn't come. Oh, great. So, welcome to this session. I'm very excited to be here and help in moderating this session and present our great faculty that is going to be presented the right way, celebrating student work as a path to deeper learning. So, very briefly, I'm going to present everybody since there are a lot of them. Mary Ellen Greenwood is in the English department, and she loves learning about. She loves learning so much, and that she jumped back into the student role to earn a PhD in education, specializing in literacy curriculum and instruction. Her research interests include self-efficacy and rhetorical engagement in first-year writing. And Beth Buyserie, a good friend of mine, she's the director of composition at Utah State, and over 20 years of experience, she's great in AI writing program administration. Rachel, how do you pronounce your name? Quistberg, thank you. Has been a lecturer in the Department of English, and she specializes in general education, including first-year writing, literature, and grammar. Also, she serves as an associate director of composition, so she works with Beth, I assume? Yes. Oh, you work together. Very good. Especially teaching 1010 and 2010. Xiao, I make this great professor and a Calico conference in California. But she's an assistant professor of English, and she also received her PhD in writing, rhetoric, and literacy from Arizona State University. Her research focuses in multimodal writing, second language multilingual writing, digital writing, and writing with artificial intelligence. And our last but not least, Kristen Wheaton. How do you pronounce your last? Yeah. Is a lecturer at Utah State University, and she is deeply committed to rhetorical education. She teaches composition and general education courses. And she is also a current PhD candidate at the University of Oklahoma. Well, time is yours. Thank you. Let's give them an applause.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you are enjoying the conference so far. I know I enjoyed the opening session about ungrading, which I feel like has a lot of really fantastic connections to what we're going to be talking about with thinking about how we're celebrating student writing. So I'm excited for this presentation, mainly because this is one of my favorite parts about teaching, right? Like celebrating students. That's, I think, one of the reasons that we all get into this business, right? We love students. We love interacting with them. We love the learning process, and getting to celebrate that is the good part. Grading's the part I don't like talking about. So I love that the celebrating student writing has such a nice tie-in with thinking about how we're working with students and assessing their work and considering it in those terms. So this is an overview of what we'll be going with today. So I'm going to do a little bit of some framing about what celebrations mean, and then we'll get into a little bit of some more specifics with celebrating student writing. I'll give a little bit of a history of how we've been celebrating student writing and composition over the last almost 20 years. And then we also have some research that we've been conducting as well that we're going to share some of those findings on. So as we're looking at kind of the framing of celebrations of student writing. What does that mean? So when we're thinking about why do we celebrate student writing, or even just celebrate student work, if it's not in the written form, you can celebrate other forms as well. What exactly does that look like? So when we say celebrating, we're not just talking about like, here's a certificate and having like a ceremony. That certainly could be one form, but that's not just what it is when we're talking about celebrating student writing. So it's more than than a pat on the back of saying like, good job, again, good, but it's a little bit more than that. And even more than that, it's more than a passing grade, right? So it goes beyond that when we're thinking about celebrating student writing. So what we really mean here is that we are recognizing student writing and student work as something that is meaningful and can be shared and heard by real audiences, not just hypothetical audiences. So writing gains power when it is staged and situated in real-world contexts. So research has shown that authentic audiences make writing more meaningful to the writers, and celebrations help students see themselves as these contributors to academic discourse, not just producing work for a grade. So it helps them see beyond that grade, going to our conference theme. So grades, I think, can sometimes feel like currency in the classroom, where it's this exchange between you and your student, and I never feel good about that exchange. And so celebrating student writing is one way that we can help us move beyond that a little bit, because we all know that grades are not the full story of a student's learning. And as we're thinking about that, in our own work in celebrating student work in the composition program, we've seen that students thrive when those assessments go beyond a single letter or a single number. And instead, that celebration invites them to reflect, to self-evaluate, and to actively participate in the feedback process. So research on high-impact practices show that authentic public engagement strengthens belonging and helps students persist. And celebrating student writing is one of those high-impact practices. So we've seen this happen ourselves and observed it ourselves with our students. When students understand their audience is something that's real, they revise more intentionally, they take more ownership, and they come away with a stronger sense of identity as writers and as thinkers. So our own Voices of USU program has been celebrating student work in general education since 2007, and it's been celebrating it both as a conference and a little bit as a reading, as well as a student anthology that is now in its 18th volume, so we've been doing it for a while. And while the way that we have been celebrating student writing with the Voices of USU program has evolved and changed over the years, one thing has always remained central in our celebration, and that is those student voices and how important those student voices are and how important it is to share those voices. So each semester we've observed again and again how these celebrations, they cultivate belonging, they teach purposeful revision, and they model inquiry as a shared and public endeavor. So with that being said, that's what we're going to be exploring today. So how we celebrate student writing and how it can help us move beyond those grading spaces into more authentic participation. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and have Mary Ellen tell us a little bit more.
This is the perfect size audience for me. Okay, so before we go into more of the history of this student celebration, which is long and dynamic and wonderful, we wanted to talk about these pillars for celebrating student writing and how we've seen them emerge as this program has evolved. So celebrations of student writing, you like my pillars? I made those myself. Celebrations of student writing, when meaningfully integrated into the curriculum, are more than moments of recognition. They are high-impact educational practices. And at USU, as Rachel said, our program began in 2007 as a stage performance, and it's evolved into a full undergraduate conference. We have, as she mentioned, 18 anthologies. And this public recognition and shared spaces, they transform how students see themselves as writers. So these are these 5 pillars that we've been playing around with. And I wanted to talk a little bit about each of these. So this first one, public presentation as pedagogy. Our opening speaker called it pedagogy, but I always say pedagogy. So tomato, tomato, right? When students know that their writing will be shared publicly, not just submitted for this transactional grade, they revise with that real audience in mind. They focus on their clarity, their tone, their rhetorical effect. And that idea of authentic audience, that heightens their motivation. It validates writing and makes it a social act. It's fun to see students really reframe how they see and experience writing when they know that their peers, their faculty, sometimes even family members will hear it. And the response, whether that's the applause, nodding from audience members, I mean, it validates students and it tells them your words matter. Your voice matters beyond, here I'm submitting my final essay. So the second pillar here, building learning community through celebration. These are authentic literacy environments. Students feel connected. So our presenters feel that pride, that agency. Audience members, while it might seem as more passive, they are part of this community of learners. They're engaging together in that moment. But it's not an automatic community. I mean, we found that there are issues of power, equity, inclusion. These are these issues that we need to navigate. And so we try to design these events where all of our students have access and we share that spotlight and we value writing in all of its many forms. So we have student self-efficacy through recognition and evaluation as our third pillar. Whether they're selected to publish or to present, there's this boost of confidence, especially with students who have never thought of themselves as good writers. When students experience this, they gain this deeper sense of authority and ownership over their own work. And even audience members see and experience and start to think about, okay, what is this good writing? What am I seeing here? How am I evaluating this? How am I responding as an audience member? And so our fourth pillar here is modeling academic work. And of course, conferences are a natural fit for this. This is what we do in academia. So we are bringing these diverse perspectives together. We are fostering this engagement. And we're having these broader conversations. And the stakes are low in the kinds of celebrations that we've done, and that's intentional. It's the first time for so many of them presenting in this kind of a scholarly context. And so the scaffolding here, it's intentional and it's invaluable. So we're kind of demystifying this academic world, this academic discourse, and helping students imagine themselves and putting themselves into this place. And then finally, we have this adaptability, which we found is so critical. Flexibility. It's going to allow those celebrations to evolve because contexts change, circumstances change, whether it's logistical, pedagogical, institutional shifts. Dealing with things like funding or, hey, pandemics or leadership change or legislation. While we think about these things, we think about our core goals: authentic audience, rhetorical awareness, student confidence. And as we adapt, we keep in mind, we don't lose sight of those values and thinking about how do these celebrations remain high impact practices. So it's more than a morale boost for students. This is a powerful pedagogical strategy, and these celebrations remind students as well as us that writing is not something just to be graded and assessed. It's this larger human and intellectual enterprise. And with this foundation, we want to look specifically at the history of what we've been doing since 2007, showing how these different pillars have come into play and where we see them emerging. Broke. Oh.
No, it's still good. The light's great. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that and some good things that we've kind of done with the conference over the years as well. So as Mary Ellen mentioned, we have been doing our own celebration of student writing in the composition program since 2007. So it was initially something that was funded by an innovation grant that the university awarded John, who's sitting here with us, thank you, John, and Susan Anderson, who just retired, were the first people to write that grant. And then Bonnie also is someone who's had a huge role in this program and celebration as well. And as we're looking at the way that this has evolved over nearly 20 years since 2007, it was initially, as Mary Ellen mentioned, thank you. It was initially a stage performance that was a reading, and this stage performance was phenomenal. Like, it was just a phenomenal celebration where we were housed in the performance hall, which for any of you who've been in that building, it is a very lovely building for that kind of venue, and we have our picture there of it in the performance hall, and it was just phenomenal. What we would do is students would come in place of the last day of class, so it ended up being a last day of class celebration, and they would sit with their classmates, and they'd had nominated one person from the class to read their essay on that day, and so those students would then get to read, and they'd have to very carefully choose what excerpt from their essay they wanted to share with the rest of the writing community. And that kind of celebration, it was dynamic, it was fun, we had music playing in between readings, there was cheering. I remember another instructor, we had a contest of who could get their class to cheer the loudest. Like, it was just so much fun. And so that celebration, we did that for a number of years, and it was just such a good time. And we ended up transitioning into what was then called the Citizen Scholar Conference in 2014. The main reason that we transitioned into this was for a variety of reasons. Programs grow, they adjust, they respond to different needs and challenges. As far as our own challenges, we did run into logistics of a single day performance, as English 2010 used to only be offered on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule. It was then changed, so that created a logistics challenge. We also had some concerns about the competitive structure. While it definitely encouraged that celebratory nature, you also have the drawbacks, as you do with anything, of that competitive structure. And then we also had some questions about like long-term sustainability as well. So eventually the conference was then, the performance hall celebration was now moved to the Citizen Scholar Conference. The Citizen Scholar Conference is an academic conference for these undergraduate students taking English 2010. English 2010 is all about research and argument. It lends itself really well to that venue. And so when we're thinking about that, it gave students a really concrete way to think about their arguments, to be thinking about how am I presenting this, and how am I presenting this when an audience actually is going to be responding to me in a Q&A session. And so that gave a really nice way of thinking of taking the audience from a hypothetical audience to a real life audience. And so that was one of the moves that was an advantage to changing that. There were drawbacks as well, like the celebration, the cheering. You don't always cheer at an academic conference. Maybe we need to change that precedent. But we lost some of that magic. But I think there are definitely ways that if we were to continue modifying, we could definitely bring some of that back. So with our Citizen Scholar Conference, students submitted proposals, they presented in concurrent sessions, and the other advantage of this is we could feature over 150 presenters in a single day. And if you're thinking, you have that many students? We do. The English 2010 has tons of students, and so it really allowed us to better represent those students as well. And as we're looking at that, it also allowed us to have more modes of engagement as well, as we also included poster sessions for students to present at. And it also allowed audience participation in a way that was more than just cheering. So it took that celebration more from going what Mary Ellen was talking about, more from just that morale boost into a morale boost plus, right? They then got to interact with the presenters as well, which I think is really crucial there. So when we're thinking about our ideas of how this celebration allows us to really engage with high impact educational practices. Our latest revision of the conference is we've now moved it from the Citizen Scholar Conference to renaming it the Emerging Scholars Conference to really help us better represent what we're trying to help students engage with, which we've been doing all along. And so the Citizen Scholar Conference was originally named after a university initiative, and so we've now named it after the idea of emerging scholars, that in English 2010 and in general education, we're hoping to teach students that this is how we're thinking about engaging in these different communities and with research, and really kind of mentoring them so that eventually when they do choose their major, because many of our students don't have a major yet, but when they do choose a major or engage with that major, they are like, oh yeah, I have already presented at a conference and now I know how to engage with this and participate in those kinds of conversations while also celebrating that student work. So it does serve that dual purpose. So when we're thinking about the conference as well, we also publish our, as I mentioned, our anthologies in its 18th editions. Those are just the covers of our anthology as well. So ultimately what this helps us really do is getting beyond the idea of a grade and getting beyond thinking about how we're celebrating and interacting with student work. This is one of my favorite quotes. I got it from an article Beth has our grad students read. But when we're looking at what we're doing with feedback, what we're doing with revision, what we're doing with the way that students interact, how can we make sure that our feedback and grading is more than just a postmortem? And the celebrating student writing allows us to do that. It allows us to engage with it in those terms. So our celebration shows that when students help define what that success looks like, they really start to see themselves as those active agents in their writing, in their voice, and in those identities. They're no longer passive recipients of those grades. So it doesn't just improve the quality of their work, it changes how they talk about learning, how they respond to feedback, and how they transfer those skills to new contexts. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of some sharing of the research that we've gathered on the conference itself.
So after our conference last semester, we conducted a little study to understand our students' experiences. So we sent out surveys to students who presented at the conference and students who participated as audience at the conference. There are too many questions to be included in this presentation. So we just selected 2 questions that are most relevant to the topic of this presentation. So those 2 questions ask students to rate to what extent they agree with the following statements about the connection between this conference and their future career. Here are some results. So these are the results for students who actually presented at the conference. I selected the highest scoring statements. So those are the 2 on the left. Students said, I have gained experience that will be valuable in my future profession, and I feel more prepared to participate in conferences and similar opportunities in the future. So as you can see, students who responded to those questions all said that they strongly agree with those 2 statements. And the next highest scoring statement is, I have grown as a scholar and profession as a result of my participants. So students said that they either agree or strongly agree with this statement. And for students who participated as an attendee, not a presenter at the conference, a lot of them feel that they are more prepared to participate in conferences and similar opportunities in the future, even if they didn't actually present. And they feel more empowered to participate in university research opportunities, and that attending this conference made their experience more valuable. So as we can see from those data and students' experiences, that they depending on their level of engagement, they all feel that this conference contributed to their future experiences and future opportunities. The future. The future of writing.
Okay, so I want to take this opportunity to say that, this is the start of my 7th year here at USU, and my previous institution did not have anything like this. And I really have been very impressed with the quality of both the conference and the voices, but then also what it allows students to do. It really helps us think about really helps us as teachers and the students think about what writing actually means. Like, why do we write? How is writing a way of learning and participating in society? And so I find both the printed Voices Journal and the conference incredibly valuable, and I'm glad we've been doing it. The other thing that I want to highlight, especially since we have so many English teachers here, is that the conference is also a way to celebrate teachers and the teacher expertise. And as the director of composition, like, I love going and watching all of the students from a variety of different classes engage with a variety of different topics, and really, like, they're looking at their teachers and they're proud of themselves and they're thanking their teachers for it as well. So as someone who works with teachers, the conference is not just a way to celebrate student writing, it's also a way to celebrate teacher expertise, which I think is particularly important given the institutional shifts that either Rachel or Mary Ellen, probably both of you mentioned, that we have institutional shifts. So one of the things that we are looking at doing in the future is having a conference that not only celebrates students writing within English 2010 and 2020, but also perhaps partnering with our new Center for Civic Engagement so that it's a conference that also is more interdisciplinary, where we're inviting students from a variety of disciplines, we're inviting teachers from a variety of disciplines to partner with us or to have their students apply for the conference, because the focus of the new center is essentially civic engagement with whatever our opinions are of legislation. The idea of civic engagement is something that I know that we can all get behind in all of our classes, because we want students to be doing the work of our classes of reading and writing so that they can participate in society. And so we'd like to use this opportunity for those in the audience to take some time to talk in small groups about what does civic engagement look like in your interdisciplinary classes. What might civic engagement look like? What are some opportunities for us to shift the way that we think about writing or the teaching of writing just a little bit, to have students be like, how does this help you engage with society in regard, whatever your discipline is? And then what might a more interdisciplinary conference at this level look like? Because as my co-presenters mentioned, we intentionally are designing this conference to serve as a springboard for the undergraduate research symposium, because we recognize that applying for conferences and presenting in front of a larger, wider audience can be very stressful or very scary or very risky. And so we're intentionally using this Emerging Scholars Conference as a way to prepare students intentionally for how do you engage as an audience member? How do you prepare a presentation? How do you practice these skills so that then you're more likely to go and propose to present at future conferences? So I'm going to invite us to get into, we have a very English heavy audience, which is okay, but if we could maybe mix up the groups a little bit and talk about what does civic engagement look like in your classes, which even for those of us who are teaching English and have had our students presented at these conferences before, we haven't ever thought about our conference through quite this lens. So we'll give folks about where are we? We have time, about 7 minutes to talk and chat, and then we'll come back together. Does that sound good? Okay, perfect.